If we don't understand it, we vote no. That's traditionally how Swiss people have been voting.
Firstly, Ludo, welcome back to our studios here in Geneva. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
And today we're going to be talking about how in February this year, Swiss citizens shot down reforms proposed by the government to reform corporate taxation, with the vote coming in at 59 to 41%. Firstly, can you tell us a little bit about what this reform was about?
It was a reform that had become necessary because Switzerland had been offering very favorable tax regimes to companies that met certain criteria. So you could call it a preferential regime. Switzerland had also entered into a lot of bilateral agreements with the European Union to get some of the advantages of the European Union, let's say. So in fact, because of those agreements, the European Union felt it was in a position to argue that this was no longer acceptable, that these preferential treatments were given by Switzerland. In fact, the European Union across the board has a problem with tax systems that are not applied to all companies across the board. So Switzerland had been giving tax rulings to companies, usually multinationals, that came to Switzerland and paid corporation tax rates of, well, let's say officially between 6 and 10%. But if the company was really big and offered a lot of employment, the rates could even go lower. So the European Union saw obviously that because of that, a lot of companies moved to Switzerland, were not establishing activity in the European Union and came to Switzerland. So this was no longer acceptable, so Switzerland had to find a solution. Well, if they abolished these preferential systems, to keep those companies here. So the solution was in fact that every canton would be in a position to lower their tax rates. So as an example, you could look at Geneva, where the corporation tax rate is still around 24%, and the proposal was to lower it to 13.5%. So a drastic lowering of the tax rate. And another number of advantages were being offered at the same time. One was called notional interest rate deduction. Another was deductions in terms of research and development activity. And this was offered to the people to say yes or no as a package for Switzerland.
And so why do you think voters were so negative about these reforms?
Yeah, it's quite strange because in the canton de Vaud there had been a vote already in 2016 and people had voted at 87% favorably. So between I think this was September 2016, so between 2016 and 17 a substantial change had taken place with Swiss voters. I think it had to do with the fact that the proposal was very complex. So I mentioned the term notional interest rate deduction. I suppose if you haven't followed the discussion, that doesn't mean anything to anybody. And it's complex issues like that made the Swiss people decide, okay, if we don't understand it, we vote no. That's traditionally how Swiss people have been voting. They are quite conservative in their approach, and rightly so, I think. So that was definitely an issue, the complexity of the proposal.
So there are obviously a lot of different reasons for why they did vote no. Yeah. But so now basically officials are going to have to go and create a new plan. Do you think that there is a solution?
There will have to be a solution because the European Union will not accept that these regimes will continue to be applied on the one hand, and on the other hand, if the tax rates are not lowered, then I presume that the international companies who have been enjoying these favorable rates will move, and that's something that's absolutely to be avoided. So I think the answer lies in addressing, if possible, all of the issues that I've been mentioning. So, for example, the complexity, I think this idea of this notional interest rate deduction will, I presume, will have to disappear, and that will make it simpler for people. They won't have to understand it because it's going to be gone. Also, some of the measures can be explained better to the people. For example, there's measures to attract investment in research and development. And the way the rules are shaped nowadays, it's clear that if you introduce these rules, that in fact a lot of activity, real activity, will come to Switzerland in research and development. So that can only be a good thing. They will need to involve the municipalities, and so in fact, if you look at it, if all of these issues can be addressed, then there is the possibility that a new proposal will be accepted, but it's going to be difficult in the sense that there is not a lot of time, because the deadline of the first impact of the referendum would have been the 1st of January 2019. So if you look at it now, the proposal will have to be rushed through Parliament, then there will have to be a vote. So it's going to be very tight and difficult, but let's hope that they'll come up with a solution. Mm-hmm.
It'll be interesting to see what that solution is and if they can get it done in time. But Ludo, thank you so much for coming and speaking with us today.
Thank you.
That's all from myself and Ludo today in the Geneva studios. But if you like this video, there are plenty more on our website, dukascopy.tv.